Welcome back, class. It's Sonja with another After Effects tip. Let's say you want to create an animated scene with multiple stages and you want to call on those stages with a setup that allows you to control which stage is being played back and when. Let me introduce the linear function to you. Linear allows you to execute custom controls in After Effects. I've set up a demo of how I use the linear function in an expression to create marker-driven animation. So, I found this beautiful tutorial by Creative Dojo. Here's the name, Creative Dojo. You can check them out, and they have this excellent tutorial about triggering an animation with markers, and for that they are using the thislayer.marker.key and then saying, you know, the number of the keys. You just start counting from the first keyframe onwards, and then they're using the linear function. And the linear function works something like this. It also exists as an easy function or ease function, where it takes like an easy ease if you're using it for position or opacity. Instead of using a linear, it can ease into the final keyframe. And the first value is typically time, because you don't want to calculate this expression just at one point in time. You want this expression to check all of the variables, all of the values that are in this linear statement throughout the timeline. So you want this expression to be like, okay, look for all of these values somewhere in the timeline. So we're starting with time. Then we're starting with the start marker. So we're saying this is the start marker. I will have multiple start markers because I have multiple scenes in this composition that I want to trigger. And so I have the first start marker and the first end marker, then a second start marker, second end marker, and so on. Here's the expression. So each marker is just an index number starting with the first marker. So they just keep counting from 1 to however many. And currently I have 4 markers, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 linear animations. I gave the linear animations different variable names because in the Creative Dojo tutorial, they are using math.min to call the 2 different markers. And this animation is slightly different to what we are doing because this is on an opacity and I am using this expression on a time remapping, so that instead of triggering the actual property, I mean, I am triggering the property of the time remapping, but it's not quite the same as saying I want the opacity to go from 0 to 100 and then back from 100 down to 0. That's what Creative Dojo is doing in their tutorial. I am doing a similar thing, but not exactly the same thing. I want to say, when I'm using this expression, play this scene, and I'm going from this marker, this first one here, to this second marker, the second one here. So these numbers are seconds. From start marker to end marker, I wanted to go from this value to that value. And in my case, those 2 values are seconds. Because we are starting at 1 hour as per my start timecode. If you don't know what that is and you'd like to find out more, it's I basically always start at 59 minutes and have at least 1 minute of timeline, if not more, so that I don't lose sight of layers that are pushed backwards. So I have kind of a 0 starting point, but I'm not actually at ultimate 0, I'm at 1 hour. So I need to take that into account in my values. And then the animation continues, and I just check inside of my comp where that animation finishes, is this comp. And it just so happens that this animation finishes at 3 seconds. I think it's yeah. So it's exactly 3 seconds to 63 seconds. You can do this expression in different ways. You can also denominate duration here and all that kind of stuff. But when the scene starts and when the scene ends, they are never going to change. I'm going to animate them to the voiceover one time. And then whenever I'm using this template composition and I'm triggering these particular animation sequences within that, they're not going to change. They're always going to have the same duration because I can move these keyframes and change the duration because I've already told this expression, calculate from this marker to that marker. So these values here, they're not going to change. The markers can change, however, and that can make the animation faster or slower if I want them to. And there is another thing that I should point out, that I'm actually currently not able to play all the markers here. The timeline is actually at 4 seconds. And that's because that's my second linear animation, the Anim 02. And that starts at 4 seconds. You can see that over here. And that means this entire comp now starts at 4 seconds. That's the last expression, or that's the last line of code in this expression, which means that's the only one that's being executed. But that doesn't matter, because what I can do is I can just duplicate this and say, okay, at this point, I want this first one to be triggered, and I can just mute, so to speak, this expression. That then means it will only play the first expression, or I can do it another way, where I can just say Anim 01 is being played, or Anim 02 is being played, and then it will just choose that linear expression for the variable that is dedicated to. But of course, it's still calculating from the markers. So nothing's happening here, not until we reach that actual marker. But that's enough for me, because I can just say, okay, for this first layer, I want you to use the first animation, which is this, and it finishes here, and then we effectively have a freeze frame on that until I want it to play the second animation, and again I can denominate that here which one is being played if I had more than these two, which I will do. And then I can say, okay, so for this entire amount of time, I just want this to be in here. Then nothing happens. And then the next scene starts playing, because now I have that second animation. I can even cut this out, like as soon as these overlap, because you don't see the layer below. I can just cut that out. And then the second scene is being played on this new layer. And I think this is a really effective way of using a template composition that has multiple stages of animation. Because now I can just call whichever one I want inside of this composition without creating multiple compositions. The reason I don't want to create multiple compositions is because all of those compositions would then share a lot of the same characteristics. And if I want to make a change to any of them, like I want to change how many rows this table has, how this the screen animates in, I'd have to then make those changes to each one of the compositions that are separate from each other but look the same. So in order to avoid that, I decided, okay, let's make a template comp. I add all of the separate scenes or all of the separate animation stages in that one template comp, and then I'll call those scenes somehow. And this is the somehow that I'm going to do it. I hope through this demo you could see how versatile the linear function can be and how you can use it in your animation. If you have used the linear function, do tag me on social media and let me know how you are using it. You can find all the links to my social media channels in the description. If you have any questions, do leave a comment and I'll try to help you. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.